In the show The Institute, you get introduced to 14-year-old Luke, who is a prodigy. I mean, this kid is a literal genius. He takes the SATs and he does so well that MIT is in his sights. That's how smart this kid is, but he has other interests. He loves basketball. He loves playing basketball with his friend Ralph, but as he's doing so, he ends up noticing that he tore his Minnesota Timberwolves jersey. And it's a classic. It's a Kevin Garnett jersey. I don't think KG was even playing when this kid was born, but that's beside the point. He has taste. His parents, however, don't really know what to do with him because, quite frankly, they're not as smart as him. So after taking the SATs, they take him out for pizza, and they sit him down, and they want to know what he wants to do. Because ideally, they want to support him. And if that means going to MIT at the age of 14, then he's good to go to MIT at the age of 14. But as Luke is talking about his future, he's getting more and more animated. He's getting more and more excited. And then all of a sudden, the metal pizza tray that he really wasn't anywhere near, it's not like he knocked it over, but that thing flies to the ground and it makes a pretty big commotion. But no one really thinks twice about it. However, there was somebody in the restaurant who did notice it. And she was sent to that restaurant for a specific reason, and that is to keep tabs on Luke. And that night, as Luke and his parents sleep soundly in their house, this woman, with the help of others, break in and essentially they kidnap Luke. Now, when Luke wakes up, he doesn't at first realize he's been kidnapped. And that's because the room that he's in is identical to his bedroom. The first clue, though, that something isn't quite right is the fact that when he picks up that Timberwolves jersey, all of a sudden it is fixed. But the big giveaway is when he goes over to the window and he notices that it is completely barred. And then he heads out of the bedroom and now all of a sudden he's in the Institute. As you can imagine, he's really confused. He's got a lot of questions, but the first person he interacts with is another student at the Institute, a girl named Kalisha. She lets him know that they're no longer in his hometown of Minneapolis. Now they're in Maine. Turns out, though, Kalisha knows a little bit about Luke because they give them rundowns of the new arrivals. And one of the things that they told the current students is that Luke is crazy smart. The one thing, though, she doesn't know is if he's TK or TP. TK is telekinesis, TP is telepathy. Kalisha is telepathic. And after Luke thinks about it, he goes, I guess I'm TK. I mean, sometimes things move around me, but I didn't really think twice about it. He ends up asking her if they've been kidnapped, and she says no, they call it recruited. As to who recruited them, she's not quite sure. What they have been told, though, is the work is so classified that the kids can't even talk to their parents. A very animated Luke looks up at the security camera and he says, well, somebody must run this place. And Kalisha says, yeah, Miss Sigby. Except for the medical stuff, that's Dr. Hendricks. Mostly just tests and a whole lot of shots. At least that's what it's like in front half, where they're currently at. After you graduate from front half, you go to back half. He asks Kalisha when exactly he's going to meet this Miss Sigby, this Dr. Hendricks. And she says they usually let the newbies just kind of walk around. And he wonders aloud why exactly they would do that, but then he figures out the answer. It's because they want the newbies to feel comfortable, and the way to do that is to have another kid explain the Institute. And it's so true. I mean, you've got Sigby, you've got Hendricks, and you've got another guy named Stackhouse all in the room watching Luke kind of do his smart thing. While watching this, Hendricks turns to Sigby and say, if the boy is as smart as you say, we should be considering him for the PC track, but Sigby shoots that down immediately. At this point, she just wants to meet Luke, go through the rundown of what the Institute is and why he's there. So she sends Stackhouse to go get them. And when Stackhouse arrives, you've got Kalisha kissing Luke. I mean, it came out of the blue. She asked him, have you ever had chicken pox? And then she just didn't even bother waiting for consent. But Stackhouse escorts Luke to meet Sigby and Dr. Hendricks. They kind of cut to the chase because Luke is that kind of kid where you can do that, and they go over the ground rules. The first rule is he cannot contact his parents no matter how much he wants to, because the work that they're doing is so vitally important that if they weren't doing it, the world that they know would cease to exist. She does make it clear this isn't his house, this isn't his school. If you break a rule at the Institute, you get a grown-up kind of consequence. The next rule is follow an order from any staff member without giving a second of hesitation. He'll be given a number of injections and tests, and he's expected to comply with all of them. When he has completed his tenure at the Institute, they wipe his memory and they send him home to his parents, where she assures them they're alive. He does ask her, "Do my parents know where I am?" And she just says, "Generally." She assures him, though, that it should be a quick process for him, and eventually he's just going to wake up in his bed and he's going to have no recollection of any of it. The next stop for Luke is to get chipped, and he's walked down to the room by a woman named Maureen, who explains the token situation. Basically, good behavior gets rewarded with tokens. Use the tokens to get snacks and stuff like that. They then come to the doctor's assistant, we'll call him, a guy named Tony, who is in charge of doing the chipping. And he's nice, but he's that kind of nice where there's a sinister side to him, and you see that pretty quickly when Luke pushes back on getting anything injected into him, chipped, anything like that, and Tony just punches him in the face. And that wakes Luke up pretty quickly to the fact that he has to adhere to this kind of thing. So he gets chipped in the ear, and now they know his every move. At this point, most of the Institute is heading out, including the woman that actually did the kidnapping. She's done for the day. But you get a look at how secretive they are about this Institute when a family accidentally turns on the road and the security has machine guns ready to attack. The lie that they're telling the public is that the Institute is full of an infectious disease lab, but reality is way different than that. There's also no cell reception, so when the kidnapper gets out of range, that's when her phone starts going off, and she gets a text from the person she's seeing, a journalist named Kate. Up until this point, this woman has been very, very secretive about the work that she does. But after a little eating, a little drinking, they go back to Kate's place, they hook up. The woman starts questioning whether or not she's on the right side of this thing. She starts wondering if Kate has any journalistic connections that could possibly be the biggest story of her entire life. But that's when Kate shows her true colors by putting a bullet in her head. Because Kate isn't just a journalist. Kate was working for the Institute, primarily working for Stackhouse, who had tasked Kate with keeping an eye on this particular employee to see if she was a weak link, and it turned out she was. So after killing her, she calls Stackhouse up, explains, yeah, she was a weak link, she was about to talk, and I need a cleanup crew here ASAP. That gives you an idea of the people that are running the show. As for the kids in the Institute, that night, Luke gets to meet everybody other than Kalisha. As Kalisha walks Luke to the cafeteria, she shows off her powers a little bit, and then she once again kisses him. But this time she explains why she's doing it. Because she had chicken pox when she showed up. They put her in quarantine for 2 weeks. They gave her no shots whatsoever, and she figures she might be a little contagious. And if she is, then Luke might catch it, and it will keep him in front half for a little bit longer. The next two kids he meets are Iris and George, and they ask him, hey, are you neg or pos? Which means if you can use your powers when you want to. Positive is, yes, you can. George is TK. He shows it off by moving around water and just dropping it wherever he wants. He then meets the last member of the Institute, at least for the students, and it's a kid named Nicky. Nicky screams rebel. It's pretty clear he's the bad boy of the Institute, and he gives everybody problems. He then whips out a cigarette and starts smoking it, and Luke questions it, and they basically tell him that you're allowed to do a lot of stuff you're not allowed to do on the outside, like smoke, drink. They kind of encourage you to be an adult because they want you to be comfortable with the place. Luke asks him how old the kids are at the Institute, and Iris says Bobby Washington was 19. He's the oldest we know of, but he went to back end a week ago. The youngest they know of was 10. When Nicky gets up to go smoke near the window, George gives Luke some advice. Don't get wrapped up into Nicky's BS. And also, don't lie because they know if you're lying. So if you see the dots, say that. And if you don't see the dots, then don't say that. And the dots are a test that's coming up for him. But that's easier said than done. That first night, Luke can't really sleep. He goes out to an area that's the playground, and he finds Nicky sitting there alone, kind of staring off at the stars. And Nicky's brought a chessboard because he's the only one that really plays chess at any level, and he heard that Luke was really good, so they start playing. And yeah, Luke's really good. He beats him in like 5 moves because Luke's a genius. And that's when Nicky says, I wonder if you're the kid I've been waiting for. Are you smart enough to know that we can't stay in this place? Or are you like the others and you talk yourself into a fairy tale thinking that it's all going to work out if you just comply? The reality is if we want out, we got to get ourselves out. So, smart kid, how do we get out? Now, while those two conspire on exactly how they're going to do this jailbreak, Miss Sigsbee is at home. But you get a sense that she's not all there either, because her idea of a fun Monday night is cooking dinner, heating up a coat hanger on the stove, and then branding herself. Yeah, she's weird. But Luke isn't the only person new to this small Maine town. There's somebody else. His name is Tim Jameson, and he used to be a big-time cop in Boston. In fact, he was decorated. He was Cop of the Year. But there was an incident. It was at a mall. He was off duty. A shooter came in, and he took out the shooter, right? Everyone looks at him like a hero. But he doesn't look at himself like a hero for a few reasons. One, the kid was legitimately a kid. He was a teenager. And while he probably was going to shoot up the mall, the idea of shooting a kid, it doesn't sit right with him. But the other reason why is because Tim was in uniform, even though he was off duty, and Tim had been drinking. When the police department found out about it, they no longer viewed him as a hero. They gave him an option: resign or get fired. So he resigned, and he didn't really have a deep plan on what he was going to do next. He kind of found himself in this small town, and that's when he saw an advertisement for a night walker. It's something that small town USAs will have. It's basically a cop that just walks around, checks on storefronts, makes sure everything's locked. It's kind of a boring job, and he applied, and he's way overqualified for it. I mean, the Chief John, told him as much, but he also said, look, man, if you want the job, you can have the job. So Tim agreed. He was set to start that night. The thing is, when he shows up to get the rundown, his new coworkers aren't the friendliest. You've got Wendy Gullickson. She's probably the rudest. And that's because she just doesn't think that this outsider is going to last very long. And then you've got Drew Reynolds, but he just seems kind of more average small-town cop. Either way, though, Tim doesn't let it bother him, and he sets up shop. He starts walking around the town, and that's when he meets the town crazy. Her name's Annie Ledoux. She knows she's the town kook. She's set up in like a parking lot with a tent, and she's listening to this radio program that is one of those radio programs crazy people would listen to, conspiracy theories, that sort of thing. She starts talking to Tim about one of these conspiracy theories, about the government bugging fillings in your mouth. But while she's crazy, she freaks Tim out a little bit because she calls him Sport. And he says, my mom used to call me that. And she says, oh, I know. After that stage show, Porky and Bess. He can't figure out how the hell she would know that. The next day, he wakes up, he leaves the hotel that he's living in, and the owner of the hotel, a guy named Norbert, is way too friendly with his pet lizard. But Tim is able to get out of the conversation when he once again sees Annie on the street. She's loaded up with a bunch of batteries, and he asks, why do you have all these? And it's because that crazy show that she listened to on the radio is having a marathon, and she doesn't want to miss a second of it. As they walk along the street, she warns him, don't talk to Norbert. And she just gives an indication that he might be crazy. So in the small town of Maine, you've got a new kid at the Institute, and you've got a new cop running the beat.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.